Probably right. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone today. I'm President Garcia Morales, and I call this work session of November 6th, 2024 to order. The time is 4:03 p.m. I'd like to remind everybody to please silence their electronic devices. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Mawapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. Okay. Before we turn it over to the Pledge of Allegiance, I want to acknowledge Trustee Jackson Hale for her first meeting of the Board of Trustees, first official meeting. So welcome, and we're glad that you're here. Trustee Esparza-Strophigan, can you take us to the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, colleagues, I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Bustamante Adams, who will be making the motion for us.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the following change. Reference materials provided for item 2.01, trustee-elect onboarding process. Reference material is provided for item 2.03, the Council of the Great City Schools.
Great, thank you very much. All right, do I have a second? Trustee Guzman?
I second.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Bustamante Adams, a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Okay. Colleagues, that motion passes 6-0. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move along with item 2.01. This is the trustee-elect onboarding process. Colleagues, thank you in advance for your grace. Thank you in advance for your grace, for your time, and understanding that these type of details require a lot of planning and thoughtfulness. And so I appreciate you. I recognize that this material was submitted to you yesterday. Appreciate your understanding and grace of the submission of this information yesterday. Anyways, we're going to move on to explanation of this document. This document, the member onboarding process, it's the chart. Thank you very much for bringing that up. It is in preparation for new members of the board, for new members who will be joining the board this upcoming January and their oath of office. I really wanted to take a moment to lay out the first essentially 90 days, and then I went and said, well, I think we need to look at this a little bit further and zoom out beyond the 90 days because there's a lot happening, especially at the beginning of the year for new members. And really planning for orientation. I've been lucky enough to facilitate three onboardings, either of elected or new members, and have a lot of experience around that. So I'm excited about continuing to improve this process and support our newest members. You'll see at the top left-hand side under task title, really project number and task title, we have the welcoming to the board. I'm asking Vice President Bustamante Adams to support me in the development of the onboarding process for members. And it really, as I was developing this, I thought maybe we also think about this in two different parts, one being the role of the board and its function, including preparing to welcome new members, logistics for the Nevada Association of School Boards conference that takes place in December, You'll see further down on like 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, there are a lot of logistics that go into this type of planning. And so I just really want to offer the board, again, a high-level overview of like the moment the new members are contacted to the moment that they like take their oath of office. There are a lot of little steps that take place, and grateful to Trustee Bustamante Adams, who will be supporting the development of the next steps for members. Okay, all right, so then we go into section 2, and then we have the oath of office. And you'll see here, in past years, we've had, you know, what is that? We've had a combination of locations from City Hall to this room to the admin center, the admin building. That's where I did my oath of office. And the reason we did our oath of office last year for our non-voting members, so they joined the board, we did the oath of office at the City Hall because this room was not ready. Yeah, it was under construction. So I want to, now that we have the room and we'll have updated new seats here very soon, thanks to facilities, in the month of November, December, we will, which we've all received communication around, we'll have an oath of office. There will be, again, lots of tiny steps like the invitation sent to members so that they can forward it to their guest. Event logistics, there are a lot of tiny steps that go into a big day like the oath of office for our newest members. And then, of course, the event that takes place. And I've have asked Trustee Bustamante Adams to help and assist with that. And you'll see that all of that happens between like November and really January 6th, which is the day of the oath of office. It's the first Monday of every year. Following that, we have, I believe it will be really important for members to consider, for the board to consider a welcome to the board orientation. This is, has been done differently in past years. Trustee Guzman and I went through a process. It was like a 4-day, 3-day training back to back. It was pretty intense. It was intense. There was a lot of information given to us because there's a lot of information to take in, rightfully so. And we were trained by Dr. Alsbury around board governance. There was last year for our newest members, we had, we broke up those 4 days into 2 or 3 different days, separate from the week-to-week situation. So again, this has been done differently in previous years, and I suspect may be done, I suggest actually to the board that we offer and provide a board training orientation that's simply like, this is your role in as a member. This is where you get your email address. This is how you get this is how you log in, how you get your stipend of a whole, what is it, $650? Woohoo. These are policies, and really just giving members an opportunity to orient themselves to the actual role and the logistics of the organization. Calendaring, just getting to know that they're on the first week after the during the oath of office, they'll have an oath of office, a work session, a regular board meeting that same week. And so they should just be, you know, that should ideally, all of that should be taking place. Some of that training should be taking place in the month of December. And that's separate from getting to know CCSD, separate from getting to know the district and the staff and the operations part of the district. Okay, let's see, and then, yep, there's a couple of other sections. The following section, section 4, is welcome to the board. This board, so as a board, we chose, to start our search process, restart it in February. And so I want to, again, lay out to colleagues that we've got as early as November, December, late November, early December, that we connect with the new members, bring them in to just simply get them caught up with the state of the superintendent search and provide briefings to them along with orienting themselves to the board. The second page behind the one that you have here, section 5, on the back of this same document, you have the welcome to the board's governance training. Again, this is a really important component, and I really suggest to the it is my, the way that I'm hoping to map this out is not even a suggestion, but because this is under the purview of the president to help organize per policy, is to please, to consider the shift, the new members who will be arriving to the board will simply may not have board governance experience, especially in a large school system. I just want to ping my colleague, just a note for my colleagues, if they do have something to share in a minute after I finish my presentation, to consider what it was like for us when we first came on the board and really getting a really strong handle on the role of governance versus operations of the school system, right? One of the greatest distractors for a system, for a school district to focus on student outcomes, really student achievement, student well-being, is a board that's distracted and unwieldy when it comes to their role as members of an organization, of a body as a team, and really not having a clear understanding of the relationship between the superintendent and board and the body of the board. So it is critical time between late November, early December, to prepare those conversations with the body, and even early January. I really don't see that ever going away. In my term, I've had, there's been a lot of learning that has taken place in the role of a trustee, and especially to ensure that it's continue to stay focused, this role, the board continues to stay focused on students. And then there's another body of work, colleagues, that this board started back in at the beginning of this year around goals. We started with the goal process, but it is, this work has been supported by the Council of Great City Schools. We paused this work in the spring due to our superintendent search, or changes in leadership, excuse me, and we really would benefit from returning to this work. The board has a responsibility to establish goals that between January, in the early spring, so that the body can then turn around and provide the superintendent these goals. These goals then are used by the superintendent to make adjustments to their to the organization in a way that honors the pace and the growth that's needed. And ideally, there's enough leeway to do that for a new school year to begin, right? So that we don't make changes in the middle of a year. These goals are essential, especially because the board could benefit from evaluating its superintendent, and in order to have an effective evaluation, the most effective boards have goals that they work towards measuring, and then also towards using at an evaluation, and then they work on measuring them over the course of the presentations that take place on in board meetings. And then these goals also help the board establish their own evaluation system to make sure that they're actually speaking to these items and focused on these goals. So it really is incredibly important that these goals continue and are established by the organization and by leadership here on this board. This allows the board to continue to remain focused on students, and to really, we were very enthusiastic about it at the beginning, especially around involving our community, and the board would certainly benefit tremendously from that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that at the beginning of next year, you have the legislative session, and you'll see that in Section 7. That's laid out just again for purposes of board understanding kind of what is coming up. And then another item that the board is going to have to make a decision on in the near future will be council. As I've shared with you during a public meeting, that there is the board currently shares council with the school district, and we're really grateful to Mr. Okazaki, who is helping us fill in while the board makes a decision. But it's really imperative that the board have its own council. It is my opinion that the board would benefit tremendously from having its own council. From previous experiences, I know that having our own council allows the body to make informed decisions in the event there are challenges with its one employee. And so in this case, when the board shares a council with the district, one, it is a heavy load. Two, there is a direct line to the superintendent and then to the board of trustees. So this board, we would benefit tremendously from having our own council, and we should have that discussion, in public at a future board meeting. And it likely may happen at the end of the year or possibly earlier on in the year. And then once that discussion takes place, then there's research and guidance from the board that's given to the board liaison. The president adds an item to the agenda, and then there will be action at a public meeting, right, towards whatever decision is made. And so again, just looking at the timing of things, you may be seeing how this kind of overlaps with legislative session, it overlaps with superintendent search, it overlaps with just your new members. And then, of course, you still have fun things like board meetings that happen twice a week, briefings that happen twice a month, briefings that happen twice a month, and biweeklies that also happen twice a month, typically, except of holidays, and then work sessions. So I just didn't want to miss the opportunity to lay that out here as well. And because it's fun, graduation ceremonies, we've got to make sure that we include those in there, and those kind of typically take place. The reason I include it is not only because it's fun, but those board members who have been through graduation season already know and understand how time-consuming that space can be in the month of May. It really is absolutely a gift that we get to participate in graduations and know that it is an all-consuming process. Okay, so again, this is there. We're welcome to have a discussion around this, or if there are any thoughts or gaps that I'd love to hear what gaps you may see or notice in this onboarding process document, what information may be missing, right? Gaps, information, and anything else to help improve the onboarding process for new members and really this body at large as we welcome new members. Please do share that here on the dais, and then we'll incorporate that. And then we'll move on to, after discussion, we'll move on to the next item. Okay, Trustee Jackson Hale.
Good evening, Madam President. Nikia Jackson Hale for the record. So as a new member that was just added to the board, I'm not sure if I missed it, but also including the PBS briefing, because I guess that's something that I still have to go through. And then I wanted to make a recommendation. So I know a new group of people are coming together to work, and just a suggestion I'd like to make is maybe doing a real colors assessment with all of the board members, or a Myers-Briggs activity before everyone gets started.
Great, thank you so much for those recommendations. Yes, programming through PBS and all the other departments that exist in the organization is really essential. Thank you for that, and great suggestion on the communication tools that allow us to get to know each other and communicate more effectively, continue to be effectively. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Zamora.
Thank you, Madam President. I was looking at the timeline for community meetings in Section 6, and I just want to clarify, Section 6, facilitate community meetings, which is 6.6. Through this timeline, it looks like you are planning to do, well, we would be planning to do meetings November 18th through December 9th.
Hey, thank you for that. Good catch. No, we'd wait until, we have actually two things. We have an item today on today's agenda, although not an action item, would need to be an action item if we chose. There's some discussion that needs to take place around the council's work. And no, the idea, my intention was for the conversations to take place in January, February, March. I believe that I meant to incorporate the planning of said meetings.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. And then the other question I have is, at the beginning for the first sections, you kept referencing, Trustee Bustamante Adams for the vice president role and leading in that. After January, would it still be Trustee Bustamante Adams, or would it be the vice president at that time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And let's see, just based off of the rhythm of the board. The rhythm's gonna stop you. Y'all know that song? The rhythm is that once the president is elected, so again, this is my recommendations, this is what I'm mapping out for the group. The president can come in and change everything. It is incumbent on this body to select a president who will help support the work that's moving forward. Or not, I'm not sure. I don't know how to dance around that without actually just saying it that way, right? I think about there was a transition that took place between Trustee Brooks and the new president, and there was work that was happening with Dr. Alsbury, for example, and then it stopped. There wasn't a lot of explanation that took place, but we just, as members, knew that the president had chosen a different direction, or there was just a lot of conversations around not choosing Dr. Alsbury. So just know that it can stop if the president chooses to.
And I do appreciate you bringing that point up, because I always like being proactive, and this is definitely, I think, a sign of us going the right direction of mapping out, but maybe thinking because of where we're at, right? If there's a possibility that we can right now just focus from now to the end of the year, so we can at least say, these are the things that we're doing for sure by December, and then having some thoughts around after December and what that looks like, just in case we're not fully committed to this, and then, a president comes in and switches everything around and then just kind of throws everything off cycle. I guess I would like to say that goals from now to December that we can for sure know we can accomplish.
Sure. Do you have specific recommendations that you'd like the trainings to take place? I mean, yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback.
Trainings, just in general, all of them?
Well,
I think, sorry.
No, please.
Phase 1, I think, does make the most sense. I really appreciate that we did have, you have ownership of the task to vice president, because she's also vice president of NASB, so it just seems like an easier kind of flow to do that. The oath of office, that's just general stuff. I do appreciate this because we didn't have this even for the appointed members, so kind of expanding that knowledge to all of board members, I do appreciate a lot, and that step. The board set up for, what is this, Section 3? I'm okay with all that so far.
Okay.
I think as we talk more, which you just mentioned is later on in the agenda, is when we're talking about the board goals and what that looks like in the board governance training. Because I think that's a really hot topic. We've discussed this before on the board of, even Dr. Alsbury, right? Like, some of us were in Elko doing this training recently, and I know it's just been a shift. So not fully that, and just where we're at for phase 1, 2, and 3, I believe. That's
Great.
my suggestion.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that feedback. I think it's great. It is helpful, and benefit of having a seasoned member is that You go through lots of different seasons with the board and gain lots of scars, and you take those scars and you like turn them into something like this document, so that it lives and exists forever and ever, right? Cool, thank you for that. Trustee Baron?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'm not sure how, if there's like a standard way, a standard operating procedure on all this, but I note on the timeline here, the oath of office event is, it says here, on the 13th of January, but you as a president, in the case, our other, starts when? January 6th?
Yeah, Trustee Cavazos is clarifying that their oath of office is on the 6th. Sorry if the lines are not
Yeah,
aligned, that's my fault.
Okay, so it is on the 6th?
Yes, correct.
Okay, then, I'm just going here off what was, I was wondering what the lag was. I guess, a week isn't that bad. So I guess that was my first, my first question.
Okay.
That I had. But the other question is, what if, I do know that, of course, the vice president will be leading this onboarding, but will there be opportunities for other members who are sitting on the board to also sit in on these trainings?
That's actually a really good point, Trustee Baron. One of the things that, as you know, having been the latest member onboarded to this organization, is that there is still so much more that needs to be presented to you, and really could be a great refresh. So if that is what the body chooses, the president chooses, then one thing to consider is that training would have to take place in public, right? Or in like briefing groups, for example. The body could benefit fully from having a public a full board training that would benefit the entire organization. Yeah, something to consider. Not married to it, but yeah, the entire board could participate. Yeah, cool, great. Thank you, Trustee Baron.
Thank you.
Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I'll go ahead and kind of go backwards here on my questions and piggyback on Trustee Baron here, what he was asking. We wouldn't have to have a public meeting. I think what he was just asking is, can, other members of the board sit in? So let's say, for instance, because there's a lot, and given a little bit of historical knowledge here, that we have never had the vice president take on this much responsibility. So to clarify, just starting with his question, if perhaps, say, I wanted to sit in on a meeting, excuse me, allergies, and I was just sitting in the back of the room taking notes, just listening, but I'm not talking, I'm just listening, that would not be an open meeting law violation, because there would only be, there would just be two trustees there, that would not be actually an open meeting law violation. So I just want to point that out. The other thing I wanted to ask is, I know that I figured that probably some of these things was hard to line up, the dates and the times and everything. So when we have here the vice president listed, vice president, vice president, vice president, all of these here, would the vice president be handling all these trainings completely alone?
Alone, as in alone in a room by herself? I don't
With the new
understand.
trustees, would she be doing this all alone?
That's
With-
typically the cadence of the vice president or the president, whoever's in charge of the training.
Okay,
I've,
because-
as the president for the last 2 years, I've trained by myself in collaboration with Joe, with knowledge from seasoned members, that training.
Okay, so would there be a possibility, if it could be confirmed by council, that it would not be an open meeting law violation, that other members could sit in? I know that I asked this because I know, and I appreciate you clarifying, sorry, frog voice tonight. I appreciate you clarifying that this is not exactly the same process as, say, for the appointed members when they first came on, and then also for the training that Trustee Zamora and Trustee Bustamante Adams had 2 years ago. So we have some changes here. I like what Trustee Zamora said about possibly focusing just until the end of the year, because the terms end on December 31st, and then things could get kind of iffy after that. Where will most of these trainings be taking place?
Typically, in the past, they've
At the
taken
admin?
place, yeah, the admin building, sometimes at the construction, the facilities building, excuse me. Where else have we trained? Yeah, that has been typically those places, yeah.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought. And the last question I had, so
Mm.
that other people have a chance to ask questions
Mm-hmm.
here, is on the format here, like when I'm just going to pick something here. Not something really easy. Let's say something, prepare logistics to welcome new members event before NASB, and then the NASB trustee training and all that. Is that, are the other members of the board, are we going to be able to receive, like, say, a copy so that we know what what the new trustees are receiving, so we're familiar with it?
I'm really glad that you selected that item because those of us who have had experiences when we go up to NASB, typically it's a great space for the newest members and existing members to link up, share knowledge, just lots of exchanging that's taking place. My experience has been that we always meet the members at NASB, like whether it's here in Las Vegas or in Reno. And my suggestion, actually, my recommendation in terms of training, is that we create an intentional space for us to meet the new members here in Las Vegas before we meet them at the airport, for example. Since we're on the topic, I'll just keep going here, is that one recommendation that I have, or that I'd like to map out if the universe aligns itself, right? I know that there's a lot of things that go into this, but we have a meeting, our last meeting of November. It could be next week. It could be it could be before the work session. We could ask the newest members to join the board prior to the work session, maybe like a early dinner, some sort of early, not cocktail hour, but just something, an opportunity for us to touch base and connect them and see them face to face before we see them at the airport or in Reno, for example. And of course, everyone would be a part of that. I mean, it wouldn't just be the vice president who would be helping coordinate those pieces.
Okay, I appreciate that, Madam President, and I really like the idea. I think we're talking about is maybe like, you're talking about maybe like a get acquainted social or just something like that, have coffee, tea, whatever. But that's not what I was asking. What I was asking is, basically, like for instance, with the vice president doing some of these things, if some of us could partner up with her to be able to help with that. I do like the idea of the social, never turn down the social hour.
All right.
But yes,
Yeah,
I just feel that there is an awful lot here. And my original question had been, would the rest of the board be able to see? Because what happened last time is Brenda Zamora, I'm just going to kind of throw you under the bus here without going into details, what I like to tell her ahead of time, is that we didn't get to sit in on that training, and then we found out later on that what they were being told in training, without going into the specifics, was not what our understanding was. So I'm in the interest of transparency and for the public and for the board, that we all have the same information. Sorry,
Of course.
this is my voice here. If you guys are lucky, I will lose my voice.
Raging, we were outraging partying
Okay,
last
so
night.
anyway, that's my question,
Got
that
it.
I hope that we
Yeah,
would be
thanks.
able to make some adjustments to this, because right now, it just looks really top-heavy for the vice president.
Yeah, it typically has been, yeah, or the president. And this is kind of what goes into it. So I'm glad to hear that there's an appetite for members who would like to contribute in a meaningful way and follow up and actually do the work, because sometimes that doesn't happen. So grateful for your experience and your interests, Trustees Cavazos. Okay, Trustee Esparza-Strophagan?
Thank you, Madam President. So I want to affirm what Trustee Zamora was recommending, to focus on the next 2 months. And I think the kind of elephant in the room is that I'm just wondering, we're going to potentially have 4 new members, and that we're having and making decisions maybe without them not being in the room. And that's where I don't think we should go any further, in my opinion. But the one thing I think we need to take care of and have a conversation as soon as the board arrives. And I guess I want to start with that question first, is on page,
2, yeah.
it's section 4.11.
Oh, okay.
Contract negotiations and having board counsel.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the timeline for me, as far as, I don't see anywhere here, because we very much appreciate Mr. Ogazaki being here, but he's doing tripled work. So I would think that that should be expedited when the new members come in, that would be for me a priority, is having board counsel be one of our first things to tackle and have representation.
Cool.
So I
Awesome.
just want it to be on record that that's one thing.
Yeah.
So my other question, going back to section 5.3, where it says identify trainer facilitator, who is that referencing and what is the topic?
I'm so glad you asked. There will be more on that, the next items. So I'll be able to prepare more framing for us at that time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's see. I think I
Okay.
turned on your mic. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so I hear what you're saying, but I don't understand. Is this something that we can't discuss right now as far as what the topic would be, potentially? Just broadly, like a general
I was
topic?
giving you some suspense, just
Okay.
like
Yeah.
more to come. Okay, no, yeah, so when it comes to, for example, the trainer earlier, I shared in section 5 at large, this is a board governance training. My highest recommendation is to provide this body an opportunity to ground itself in its role. When you have new structure, large amount of members who will become voting members who will be joining the board, you really would benefit, the entire body would benefit from having some sort of governance training. And by governance, I mean, right, board governance, the role of the board versus the superintendent, and also being clear around policy, especially because we've adopted balanced governance practices through Dr. Alsbury on some of our policies. So that's really what I mean is that the body should make a decision in terms of how it trains its new members and really the body at large on its role of governance.
So my follow-up to that is, because some of us did go to a training in ALCO, and we did have that opportunity to have the training initially with Dr. Alsbury. So I want to hear some historical understanding or context. You had him, what happened, why did he leave, and why did that not continue?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, maybe, Trustee Cavazos, is that something that you can chime in and share simply because that happened while you served as president, and maybe Trustee Brooks also, because she led that effort to bring him on board with the full buy-in of the body. So thanks for that question. Yeah, let's see. Trustee Cavazos, can I turn it over to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We had some issues that had to do with policies and some conflict and disagreements having to do with who had rewritten what policies. There were, doing the cough drop too at the same time. So at that time, there were some disputes with former board members that were on the board at that time having to do with whether certain policies had been rewritten without the permission or the approval of the rest of the board members. And so we came to kind of like a stopgap, came to like a place to where we could not proceed any further. And it was communicated to me that at that time, again, without going into confidential conversations, that Mr. Alsbury, Dr. Alsbury, was not comfortable with proceeding further at that time because of the circumstances. That's a summary. That's not every single detail.
High level. Thank you for that summary. That's right. Thank you for that. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I could provide some historical. We paid a large sum of money for him to come and do training. Then we also paid for him to do training and onboarding for new members, and we did transition planning. So as I was the outgoing president, I had a list of items that I turned over to the incoming president. Among those were revisions of policies that Dr. Alsbury revised himself after we held public meetings and he got feedback from the group. He revised them, and then they were posted as notice of intents, and then the incoming president attempted to revise them behind closed doors and was unable to. So then another member called this Policygate and created a lot of untrue speculation that did not occur. And then the president at that time allowed that member to pitch this conspiracy in a public meeting in violation of board policy, and Dr. Alsbury quit working with us.
Yikes, yikes. There is, I forgot about Policygate. That actually is actually, it's a term that was used online, and there's probably lots of articles published around it. This piece around Policygate, there's if we go to board docs and look for that presentation that the board member presented back, it must have in 2021, they had an entire slideshow that documents the concerns that they had, and then shortly thereafter, Dr. Alsbury, that's right, stopped working with us. But he does work for the Nevada Association. He works with. Yeah, Trustee Esparza-Strophick, and did that help color some of your questions?
I appreciate the historical background. I think that's important. And I guess because I saw the presentation that he did in all of the districts in the state, and it was based on research. And he does research across the nation. He actually does things internationally with board governance. He's actually one of the founders of board governance. He created that model. So my question is I wonder, will he be willing to return to us, knowing our past, knowing that maybe we have a new board coming in, and a lot of us that really would benefit from true balanced governance training and going in depth, because he is the researcher. So that's just something I'm putting on the table. I'm hoping we can consider that as a member. I'm just speaking as an individual, but as a group, some of us did experience him.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Trustee Esparza-Strophick. And this is a really, thank you for those insights. They're on the record. And well, that item is not up for action today. It's certainly something that could be in the future, and something I hope we can hang on to in preparation for the discussion that's next. Let's see, the other thing I want to share is that this is Dr. Alsbury's work, actually, that it is his body, his life's work is balanced governance. Books, research, training. He's trained Washoe County too, and their county commissioners as well. So there's like alignment in language and goals, just a lot of different things. So just know that. Thank you for bringing that up. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say thank you for pouring in the work. It does take a lot of coordination, a lot of planning, and I do agree with focusing on the first 90 days because we don't know what will happen, and we have new people coming on. In addition, I just want to say I would welcome any input, especially for our newest trustees, like Trustee Baron, right? There was Trustee Zamora and I had a certain type of training, and so we were able to express our opinion on what could be done differently. And so I would welcome that from the members, because we're only getting better, right? And so I just don't want to put that out there, that is something that I would like to hear. And I appreciate being given the task. I'm looking forward to helping the board in the next 90 days. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Trustee Cavazos.
I'm going, since I've spoken already, I would like to wait until, who is that there? Is it Trustee Guzman that was in the queue?
I took myself out.
Oh, you
How
took
about-
yourself out?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and speak.
You've got the mic. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I will just say that thank you to Trustee Brooks for her input. We don't agree, but I don't think that that's something we should get into the weeds on right now, so that we don't take our focus off what we're doing right here. But I do want to concur with Trustee Esparza staff again. It was a great training in ELCO. We really enjoyed it. And we had quite robust conversations with Dr. Alsbury. And I wanted to point out that, again, he is absolutely the author of Balanced Governance. You know, he does not have the same model as A.J. Crabhill and the Council of Great City Schools. That is completely different. And so I just want to say, I want to just kind of concur with what Trustee Esparza Stofferkin, and he expressed interest in being able to come back. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. 2 points. One is, I think the challenge of one person being invited to these trainings is that you have to extend an invitation to everyone. That's what makes them a public meeting by default. And then regarding the transition, I agree. I think this timeline is a little bit too far out. The problem is that you're training incoming people, so you have to make sure that I would probably map it out to February, and then because you're going to have a transition in leadership, I would probably remove titles and put names instead so that you can have a sustainable plan that's not actually tied to, it's not tied to this position.
Great, thank you for that feedback. Trustee Johnson?
Yeah, I actually appreciate the long timeline. I wonder if we could make it tentative, because I think having things spelled out and just saying, like, this is when we intend to do this and subject to change, I just think it gives us a good frame. So the first 90 can be concrete. Past 90 days, when we know we'll have significant change, it can be tentative, but that gives us the template from which to work. The second point I wanted to make is that because we are going to be a board of 11, and I don't know how creative we can get with this, or how do we do this in public, but I do think more than anything, it's the ability, and I love Member Hill Jackson's talking about, like, either a strength finder or the colors exercise, but those are just two foundational parts. Those will help us understand who each other are, but the real crux of the work is understanding how we work with one another, and how do we come to, not consensus, how do we come to decision-making with 11 people? And I think that is actually work that I hope that we can figure out, a facilitator that can help us walk through so that we get better at, understanding how we discourse, understanding how we agree or disagree, and then still come to a decision that is for our students. And that will actually take some work. And it's going to be more than just like the color training. That will help us, that'll be like the foundational part. And then there will have to be work. So I don't know what the creative solution to that is, which is, whether we do that in a public meeting and spend, the time to do it, or if we can have a retreat of some sort, but it is going to be necessary for us to have solid time to work on us as a group, figuring out how do we make decisions and what we want to get accomplished together, and then going out and figuring, then doing the listening. So just a suggestion, I don't know how we do it, so I didn't give you a solution with my challenge.
Great, thank you for that. The thing I'll bring into the space is regarding the, anytime we spend money, we bring that as an action item before the board, right? So I think there's an appetite, it sounds like there's an appetite for some sort of group, a tool or training on a specific tool, and I encourage you to talk to Trustee Bustamante Adams or share your insights. I mean, this is the space to do that here, but that thing could be purchased potentially before the start of the new year, so that in January the board begins that work, right? So something to consider. Great. All right, let's see. Oh, Trustee Zamora.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to clarify, because some members said the first 90 days, and I know when I was talking about it, I wanted to focus in the next 60 days. So just kind of seeing where the timeline, if we're agreeing on the timeline, because I think the first 90 days, I'm interpreting that, from January 6th, right? For the new board. So that's what I want to clarify. And then my second question was, what are the next steps now that you had heard from everyone?
Great. So clarity, colleagues, we're seeking just some general insight, consensus about how you define the next 60 days or 90 days, or what does that mean? Just feedback, looking for feedback. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you.
Mine is just for support for whomever does this training. Because one of the things that I found being on this board is that half of this board believes that when they were elected, not appointed, but elected, that they were elected by the people, so the people guide how they look at things, how they see things, how they vote on things. Whereas some of us on the board think that the community voted them to make those decisions and to collaborate with the district. And so because there are two ways of thinking when we're thinking about that, I think that in the training, we need to have somebody assist whomever is doing the training to kind of make sure that we all understand our role and we're all on the same page. Because personally, I listen to my community and I vote accordingly, but I feel like I feel like that that has put me at a disadvantage. And so I feel like for our new board, we want them to start on a good, in a good place. And we want them to understand what it's like to be on this board. Because if you don't have that understanding, even if you've been on a board, and I have, Autumn has been on the board. We know what a board is like. It is completely different to be on this board. And so that perspective needs to be shared. And what that looks like. Is it going to change the way people think? Absolutely not. But it is going to help you understand where I'm coming from, and I understand where you're coming from. And so that's key. And as someone who knows a colors trainer, I don't know that that would be the best. I think, but I think you should definitely talk to NASB. And when I say that, I'm not talking about Nevada, I'm talking about the national. And I think you should talk to them because I went to the Council of Great City Schools and I didn't find anyone who looks at boards like that. Now, in our next section of the agenda, somebody may push back on me and tell me that I'm wrong, but that's fine. What I'm saying is that I do know that they do that on the national level.
Hey, thank you for that, Trustee Guzman. I'm really present to the perspective that you shared and some of the lessons that you've learned based off of your experience of both, understanding both sides of this coin. Yes, absolutely, we're elected by our community, our region, and or we're appointed by a municipality, right? And there is sometimes dissonance that exists between what the community seeks and what is best serves the entire district, and that dissonance can create friction on this board that is not in service of students. So thank you for that perspective, and that's something absolutely this body should consider as it's developing its plan for training past 60 days. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. All right, Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so I'll make that clarification. For me, I think about quarters, so 90 days, but I do agree with up to January 6th. So if that's 60 days or less, then, oh yeah, because today is November 6th. Yes. So yes, for clarification, I agree with that.
All right, great, thank you for that. Trustee Esparza-Stroffigan?
So I do appreciate Trustee Guzman for bringing up the national because, again, some of us went to a CUBE conference here in Vegas. And the value of meeting other board members across the nation that are in large urban school districts, I'm telling you, the networking that we did there and some of the trainers that we met there, I think are individuals we need to explore So I appreciate you, because I was going to mention that. So thank you, Trustee Guzman, for mentioning that piece of it. My question is, 10 months in as an appointed trustee, and I really would like to go back to what Trustee Guzman was talking about, the role of being a trustee. And we are not operational. We are not here to fix the problem. And I think clarifying clearly, and I appreciate some of the listing here for like ethics training. We need to really have a deep dive into ethics training for these new trustees. We need to have true Robert's Rules of Order training. It's not just giving a book to someone, it's actually going through the procedures and the process, and there's other simulations and videos that can be explored or purchased, and they're very reasonable. And then I think also the other thing is, I think, what else is listed? There was one more. OML. So I think those are like hitting the ground running, important for new trustees to get under their belt. And like all of the other things about meeting people and knowing what the departments are, that can come later. It can come throughout the year. I don't think that is like a pressing need. It's like knowing what the rules are and what procedures need to be followed so that you don't get a violation or break the law.
Great, thank you for that. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm curious, I know we have this member onboarding process. I'm curious what the board is going to do for onboarding new leaders to the board. I know becoming the board president is challenging. It's not just innately picked up. So how does the board plan to address that, or do they plan to address that?
It's not on the chart, Trustee Brooks. I don't think we can address it. It's not on the chart. But open to suggestions. And certainly, do you have any suggestions, given that you've have helped, you've served in leadership for the majority of your time on the board?
I actually hired a consultant to do it, but it was during COVID. So I think that's, we're going to be in a different type of challenge. I do think we're, the board's better positioned because of the fact that we do at least have a vice president that has been here. But I think, actually crafting the agenda, going and picking stuff for briefings, that stuff really needs to be coached, or there needs to be some at least guidance provided.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. The need to receive coaching as president. Again, 2 years, and certainly I've learned that policy is a tool that's used for all members to help us all function. As of late, my role has been primarily just putting out fires left and right, and it's really, really unfortunate because that creates purposeful distractions away from the district's focus. So warning to the next president, that is oftentimes you have to be prepared to have a tennis racket in your hand and start whacking tennis balls away that are not tennis balls, like baseballs or other balls that are not playing on the court correctly. So yes, something for the board to consider. Certainly would have to be past the 90 days, but if it's the appetite of the board, past the 60 days. But if it's the appetite of the board, there could be work that's done in November, December in preparation for the transition. And I'm happy to support and however that looks like. Trustee Johnson?
Is it possible to have you do some of that training now, just task you with, well, I guess you wouldn't be able to do it now, but task you with doing it in January once that person is selected, or if you're not going to be available and because you have the institutional knowledge and the people who have institutional knowledge won't be there, can we codify some of the tasks that need to be done now so you can write those down, pass those off to a board liaison, and then the board liaison can be the trainer of the new board president? Because to me, if the people who have been president aren't going to be there anymore, you can download that information now. Say, I'm sorry, Trustee Cavazos, I looked right at you and I literally blanked on it. But so that might be helpful, but also the most current president has seen some of the evolutions, and so what you know is actually really critical to what happens next. And so if you're not going to be available to provide that, codifying it now is actually going to be really critical. So over the next 60 days, making sure the most important topics are like gotten from you to Joe, and then from there, the new president has the opportunity to have those conversations when they get elected.
Yeah, certainly. And thanks for that, Trustee Johnson, and for your kind words in terms of the body of knowledge that exists and the need for it to be downloaded and transferred. And in my function and roles outside of the board has always been primarily an OD and knowledge management role, so that I understand how important processes, systems, and SOPs are in any type of transition for any individual, right, and especially in leadership. The thing that I want to bring to the space here around primarily relying on someone like a board liaison is that they are, the dynamic is very unique there, right? Like the board member is not technically, is very much really the board or the body of the board, and in this case, sometimes just like one member who has an interaction. The power dynamics are very unique and cannot be dismissed, right? So I, as a board member and as a board, we oversee one employee. That board, in this case, a board liaison reports directly to the superintendent. So not to say that like their ability to coach and support can and may not always be to the full extent a colleague could say, hey, there's the agenda needs to be posted on, board, staff always takes care of that for us. That's a horrible recommendation idea. But like, hey, if colleagues are asking for X, Y, and Z, these are some options that you consider, or go to council if you have X, Y, and Z. So I just caution the board, because if staff are primarily relied on as the knowledge sources, the president doesn't necessarily have to listen to the staff, and can create distractions for the board. So I'm happy to support in whatever way is necessary to download as much as I can to my colleagues, and especially if you want to go grab coffee, just know I'm available for coffee to download as much as I can to all of you. Trustee Cavazos?
Yes, this is just a discussion item tonight, right, Madam President? This is a discussion item only?
Yes, that's on the
Okay.
agenda. That's what
So
says on
do
the
we
agenda.
have anything further as far as going through here? I know that we have some folks here that are here to speak on other agenda-sized items. Do we have any that you have, any items specifically that you have chosen that you want us to address before going on to the next item?
No, I'm simply waiting to hear colleagues finish being in the queue. So if you're done, you
All
can
right,
jump
thank
off. Thank you. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I really liked the advice that, or the suggestion Trustee Johnson gave about you downloading the information. I think maybe, I agree with the delivery system staff being a problem, just because the power dynamics and staff telling the board president what to do when they're distinct causes a challenge, but perhaps you could leverage a relationship through the Nevada Association of School Boards and have a different school board president come and provide support. I know a few years ago they had a mentorship opportunity, so that might be a good path. And I probably, if it were like a training opportunity, I probably would offer it to multiple board members who might become leaders during their tenure.
That's great. Great point. Thank you in terms of sustainability, for sure, for the body. Thank you for that. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. Trustee Johnson, you brought up a good point about the leadership and that transition, right? Because I think for the past, unfortunately, the presidents are the ones that are leaving, and I feel like there's been that gap of the knowledge part. So, except Trustee Cavazos. But no offense to you, Trustee Cavazos. But it's been a while, right? Like, we've grown so much. It's just not a board of 7, it's a board of 11, right? So it's still, it's a lot of new information. But I was trying to figure out if you're asking for something more, because when we elected Vice President Irene Bustamante Adams, that was the very reason I think that Trustee Brooks mentioned why I needed to be her, because she was not going to be on the ballot. And am I missing something, that the information has not been downloaded so far to Vice President, or are you asking for more, like some?
There's only so much.
stuff.
Oh, no, I don't forget. I'll let Trustee Johnson jump in here, but I will say that to credit Trustee Bustamante Adams, she has absolutely been a great source of absorber, a sponge, and still you have to constantly think about how you're downloading that knowledge even further beyond just one member. And I would say the importance of this particular piece is that I am now just getting a better grasp of this role. It's taken 2 years, right, as a president. And certainly we've had new members come on board, so there's just always new challenges that are coming your way. So even the board that existed 5 years ago versus the board that exists today is completely different. And I would just offer that there is simply, it's a complex role, and it has a lot of moving pieces to it that are not simply graspable in just a year only. But that doesn't mean that it can't be done. And can be done without success. Trustee Johnson?
Yeah, I think the thing I was thinking about is the system that we create, less than I was thinking about the people who sit in the seats today. So the system we create is eventually all these people will be off, and we have to have a good system for the way that knowledge is transferred from one person, from one leadership person to the next. And so Trustee Brooks brought up, like, we didn't have a way that we had documented the way that it was going to happen. And so I was naming one. I actually appreciate the addition to that suggestion, is just take our staff out, but we have an objective third party. We have a download of that information in some way, shape, or form. And then it consistently evolves over time, because in 5 years, when this board is sitting here, and who knows what composition we'll have, the information will be different, and we want to make sure that we have a way to transfer that information from one set of people to the next.
Good point. Thank you for that. I think Trustee Zamora, I heard her say, yes. I don't know. Thank you. Trustee Zamora, you originally asked, what are the next steps? So thank you for that and allowing us to all contribute to the conversation. 60 days, the next 60 days, I heard loud and clear, is where the focus will be. And I've asked, in my role as president, I have the opportunity to myself facilitate, coordinate and organize a training based off of policy. However, in this case, I can also delegate. I've delegated this task to Trustee Bustamante Adams, who will then work closely with our board liaison to prepare the next 60 days. And then, and that's, and I know she was taking copious notes, captured potentially tools, NASB, just other things. So just be on the lookout for some potential action items in the near future. Cool? Awesome. Thank you. We're now complete and can move on to item 2.02, governance professional learning. Trustee Esparza-Strophagan, thank you for that opportunity to provide a little bit of a opening to this item. It sounds like, based off of the conversation that we've had, there is a desire to have clear distinction of the role of the board member for this upcoming body, and maybe the role of the board member is not the right term necessarily, but that's the simplest way that I can put it. I'm grateful to hear there's a general awareness, both from members who have served and have learned tremendously in this role, that the pressure points exist and that are very, very, very real, and can be quickly, to Trustee Guzman's point, there is an importance to establish these type of understandings of what type of member best serves the organization and students at large. And those weren't your words, I'm sorry. Those are, like, I'm taking that and interpreting it in a different way. Forgive me, Trustee Guzman. Thank you for the grace. So I want to just share with you all that I hear the importance of governance professional learning, and that can be broad. I'm going to go through, you've heard already what we've done in the past with Dr. Alsbury, and there's an appetite. It sounds like there could be a desire for him to continue to serve in the future in this sense. And then I've heard, hey, we should lean on the National Association of School Boards to potentially do some of this work. I think it may be important. One question for the body to consider is whether or not these groups collaborate with each other, or are they separate groups, right? Do they play in the same sandbox? And so, yeah, I open to any discussion that would allow us to get closer to bringing a contract or an agreement or something to the board, so that the next, or maybe this is not something that you're interested in deciding in right now because it's not part of technically the first 60 days. I'm okay with that too, but just know that that may be helpful. And lastly, this will dovetail nicely into the Council of Great City Schools item. There is work that we could access through the Council of Great City Schools, through governance work, and I will give you all a chance to chime in. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I think when we're framing this work, the key, under the key activities, it says at the top, adopt contract and implementation plan complete. Number 2, schedule kickoff training complete. And 3, complete kickoff training. Here's my thing. When we're looking at this, I want us to all remember that we adopted and we signed up and we have a contract already with the Council of Great City Schools. And Trustee Cavazos went through that contract with a fine-tooth comb and asked lots of questions about it. And so if we do not move forward, Trustee Cavazos will back me up on this. I believe it was $150,000 we have to pay to the Council of Great City Schools. So I want us to be very mindful when we're looking at this, because we as a board have said this is our pathway forward. We signed a contract. We are on the hook, as they say, for that amount. And so, or it's $60,000 if we actually do it and we vote as a board and we adopt the things that they say. But I want us to be very mindful as Trustee Garcia Morales is going through this, that this is something we have already decided we wanted to do.
Thank you for that, Trustee Guzman. And I want to just take note that you were referencing item 2.03 for the Council of Great City Schools, right? That's okay. And you've inspired me. You've inspired me. Within the you're good. Thank you. No, you're good. Thank you. You've inspired me within the purview of the president who's facilitating said meeting, our meeting. I can merge both 2 items. So I'm going to merge the professional development and the Council of Great City Schools. Hopefully that's not that just gives us a chance to chat about it. And I want to just note for the record that Ben Mackey is present and available to us. Hi, Ben. Are you there?
Good evening. I am here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd asked Mr. Mackey to come in and provide us an update. What's the confusion? What's happening? They didn't hear that you merged 2 items. Oh, no? Oh, Okay, let me,
Can you hear me?
you're good, Ben. Forgive me. Yes, I'm rewinding. I'm just doing that rewind and rewinding to the moment where I said, Trustee Guzman, you inspired me. Thank you. We're going to be taking items 2.02 and 2.03 together. Is that clear? Are there any confusion? You have a question about the merged items? Oh, okay, let's see. Let's do it. Trustee Cavazos, go ahead.
Just to make clear, so we didn't have any reference material for the governance professional learning, which was 202. So we started the discussion on that. So I just wanted to quickly address what Trustee Guzman had said, and she's correct. We are on the hook. The original contract was for $40,000. We were
I'm going to
penalized.
pause you there because
We're
I
pen-
have updates for the board, and that's why Ben is here too. So if there is a desire, forgive me, Trustee Cavazos, I don't mean to interrupt, but before you start sharing, and I should have done it with Trustee Guzman too, when they're saying like we are on the hook for certain amounts of money, I think this is why I have Ben here. So if he could also, if that is a question that we have of him, then we can ask him from the source, ask the source.
Okay, so we were not actually, when Trustee Guzman was talking, she was not actually referring to 202, she was referring to 203, but now I can't refer to 203 because we're
Oh.
going to merge 202. I
you
just
can
want to make
refer to
sure, and 203.
Yeah, yes, we are merging both 2 and 3.
Okay, so I'll save my comments for during that discussion.
This
and-
is the discussion, you can do it,
Yeah,
come
and so
on.
we have no, I'm fine. We don't have any reference materials on 202.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'm fine, I'll wait, thank
Oh,
you.
Well, this is, I just want you to know they're both the same. Now I've merged them. Or should I unmerge them? What's happening? What's happening? Do we separate them? Yeah? Oh, okay. We prefer them. Okay. Nope, 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 nope. That's okay. Thank you for that feedback. Oh, no, no. It's not too confusing. Forgive me, it's not confusing in my head, but I appreciate you sharing that it's confusing for you, and we can separate them and bring them back to, go back to 2.02. Trustee Brooks, based off of your, I'm going to give you a chance to, I'm going to give you a chance to jump in because I heard an audible from you on this side.
Thanks, Madam President. It might benefit the board to merge them unless you want to have a pure conversation about the topics separately. So if you'd like to only talk about the council and not mention balanced governance or any other trainers, then the president will just need to warn you to stay on task. It's up to you if you want to not talk about the pros and cons of both of them at the same time.
What a beautiful example of as seasoned members giving us a chance to just some additional insight that is really valuable and helpful in this conversation. So thank you for that. I will, based off of what I'm hearing from members who have a desire to separate these items, forgive me, I'm going to go ahead and separate them, unwind. So they were together, now they were separated, they were together, now they're separated again. Simple. Okay. So again, we are now only speaking on 2.02 governance professional learning. And I hope you all picked up something there from my earlier remarks. Go ahead and jump in the queue. Again, this is not the Council of Great City Schools. So Ben, you're good to go for a couple of more minutes while we go to that item, when we transition to that item. Thank you. Trustee Zamora, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam President, for actually separating the two, just because it was getting confusing for me. Because as we talk about governance professional learning, we're talking about Dr. Alsbury and other options, but then council is completely different than what the project's going on. So I'm glad that Trustee Cavazos was able to find out if Dr. Alsbury was interested in coming back. Like you all know, I was in Elko doing the training as well, and it went really great. He actually mentioned, as we're doing our superintendent search as well, he worked with Washoe County as well during their superintendent search, so I think he has that experience as we're moving forward in that soup search, right? What he ended up doing was getting the top 3 candidates that the board had and had conversations with them, which I thought was being proactive and beneficial, so then any upcoming superintendent actually had an idea of how it will be working moving forward. And it was just a very collective, I think, experience that Washoe County did. And I'm glad to know that county commissioners in Washoe are also doing the same model that you mentioned, President. So that was it. I just
Thank you.
keep it there. And then NSBA is the national for NASB, and NASB is in partnership with them. So I'm sure we can get that support.
Cool. Thanks for that. I see Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to say that I have, in the last couple months, received training from the National School Board Association, and so I've been very pleased. And I would like to consider what they could do for the team. And so I both had it at the Pacific Region Board training, and then for CUBE, that was just here last week, I think it was. And so anyway, I've been very pleased with how they're assisting school boards, and I think they're worthy of a conversation if we take an action item at another time.
Great, thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Trustee Esparza-Straphigan.
Thank you for separating the items, because what could have happened is you make an assumption that we'd get training on board governance from a different entity. And so I want to make it clear that we need to keep those separate. So thank you. And I want to support Bustamante Adams, Trustee Adams, your comment for, I have a recommendation or consideration. Why can't we reach both and have them maybe put together a proposal, and so that we can see maybe what the fiduciary cost of that would be, what the scope of work would be, what the deliverables would be, and what the time constraints would be. And I know that we all just love having people present to us, but if that's something that could be considered in a short board item in the future, I think that's something worth our time, because board governance is, I know, something that we as a board, probably all of us, would benefit from. So I just would like that as a consideration.
Yeah, great, thank you. And great, appreciate that insight. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to suggest that maybe the new board tackle this topic. They're going to be the ones best suited to know who is going to work with them. I'm not sure that we'll be able to make a decision that will be accepted willingly, wholeheartedly by them.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. That is not part of the 60-day plan, Trustee Brooks, so thank you for bringing that up. But it could if there's an appetite from the board. And so thank you for that. And yes, you're right, that is not part of the 60-day plan necessarily. That colleagues mentioned is a priority. So maybe, yeah, I think that may be something really important to consider for members and specifically leadership on the board as they make a decision. It's kind of, the way I'd like to describe that is a little bit of a chicken or the egg situation. You know that existing members who will be here know that new members who have never, from my knowledge, from observing, there's not a lot of ways you can get this experience of serving on this Clark County School District Board unless you've served on the school board in LA or Chicago or Miami-Dade or Broward County, right? Unless you have that specific experience, it does not, your leadership does not, I mean, your experience may not compare necessarily to this. So existing board members, we know that the new members will need, current board members know that the new members will need some sort of training, but that may not be necessarily part of the 60-day plan. So I just leave that for the board to consider as you're thinking through next steps, and either send out an RFP, which is a great idea, Trustee Esparza-Straphigan, that details specifically what the board is seeking from a consultant. You'd need to have a public discussion around that, and then follow the RFP process. So And Trustee Brooks, can you go back on in the queue? Because I think it may be valuable to learn if, based off of your 8 years of serving on the board, did you ever experience resistance from new incoming members around board governance training? And if so, what was that like?
Generally, I think the training that we provided was accepted. What we found as far as resistance was the implementation part. Most of the trainers we had, they delivered the same message, which was your job is to focus on policy and oversight, and there's a clear line between what you do and staff does. The problem, challenges that we always had were members who heard those words differently and interpreted them differently, and enforcing policies. So it's really incumbent upon the leader of the board to make sure policies are consistently adhered to. Even if it's your friend that's breaking policies, it's really important that there's consistency because people notice and it creates a lot of friction. For the most part, the delivery person was not the problem. The challenge that we had with some consultants is that they were not very direct about, there's a tendency when you're a consultant that you want to keep getting paid. So if your board is a mess or there's members that are a mess, you won't directly tell them because you want to keep getting paid. So you don't want to hurt their feelings, and then when your contract renewal comes up, you don't get your contract renewed. So they're not, sometimes if they're paid consultants, they're not as truthful about who's causing the friction or how the friction could be addressed, because they're walking a fine line between making sure they have an opportunity for continued financial support versus offending a member.
Yeah, that can be a really tricky line for any governing body who has a trainer, or any group has a trainer. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. As someone who's actually worked as a consultant, that actually is unethical, what Trustee Brooks just stated. So I disagree. And I do think that what Trustee Brooks did say, though, is that the new board decide, and Trustee Esparza-Strofigan ask for an RFP. All those things are good. I think all those things are good. And I do suggest that you move forward because board governance is really great. I love these ideas of going through the National School Boards Association and CUBE. I know that when I went through some of their training, it was great. So I think opening that doorway. Also, I do not believe that Dr. Ellsbury works with the council. So, so I think that is also something that that the new board will have to discuss. So all of those things are good. I think all of those things will provide great board governance, and I think it's a great pathway forward.
Great, thank you so much, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. To clarify, my comment about them not wanting to offend the board member were words out of their own mouth. They felt that they didn't want to offend the member, and that it would cause friction where they would lose their contract. So I'm just repeating a conversation I had. My question about this governance professional learning is, how is this different than like the stuff that's already going to be happening in December for them? Or is this beyond December? Is this building off of that? Or is this, I guess I'm a little confused. I'm not going to be here, so I don't have to really deal with this confusion, but it seems like the board's going to be getting governance training from like 4 different places. How does this tie together?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, and I think that's where some decision points need to be made in preparation for our newest members. This, some more historical context for members is that I shared earlier, Trustee Guzman and I were trained by Dr. Alsbury around board governance. Trustee Zamora and Bustamante Adams had Deb Darby, the Debs, y'all remember the Debs? Deb Darby, Deb Oliver. Our newest members received training around governance between me and Mr. Mackey and Council of Great City Schools. So the board would benefit tremendously from having consistency with board governance. To Trustee Clabaso's point earlier, like, hey, it doesn't serve us if one group gets one thing and another group gets another thing. So the board could benefit tremendously from like sticking to one and getting its training from the said group. Great. Thank you for the discussion and the conversation. I feel like there is more questions still than answers, but there is some interest and or desire around future RFQ or QRF. No, we call it something else here in the district. It's not RFP, but technical RFQ. That's what it is. Thank you. An RFQ in the district for potential consultants, contractors. Trustee Barone, I'm going to move on to item 2.03. Did you have something for 2.02 or 2.03?
I just wanted to make a.
Oh, okay, yeah.
To close 2.02.
Oh, no, Trustee Barone, you don't need to make a motion. You're good. Thank you.
Then let's go to 2.02.
Yeah, thanks. Look at that. Look at that. Magical powers. Only action items require closure. 2.03. All right, Ben, Mr. Mackey, can you please come back off of mute and walk us through where we are with the council's work and anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yes, I'd be happy to. President Garcia Morales, thank you for having me. It's great to be with you all again. So as a reminder, Council of Great City Schools is a nonprofit member organization of some of the largest districts around the nation. We work with boards on board governance, and we were happy to be selected by this board back a little over a year ago. We began the work in January in earnest. It went on pause after we had moved through the initial training, put together the implementation plan, had begun to have conversations around community listening. The board considered a draft community listen planning, made some adjustments to it. That community listening was to serve as the foundation for really getting community feedback and setting goals and guardrails as we had discussed on them. So it has essentially been on pause in terms of active work since the spring. The contract did include the $60,000 kickoff, but then also any unfinished work that would come above that amount would be billed if the board decides to terminate the contract and move forward. Based on the amount of hours and the length of the pause, there's actually no additional cost if the board were to choose to move in that direction in this instance. We are here and would love to continue to support the board if that's what the board chooses. And if the board chooses to go a different direction, that is okay with us, of course. At the end of the day, we want the board to do what the board needs to do to really get focused on what its priorities are, and whether that's with us or anybody else. We respect that and look forward to that. So happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. This is Trustee Bustamante Adams, if you can't tell the distinction. But we're going to take questions from other trustees. Is there anybody in the queue? Although I can't see who's in the queue.
No, there's no one.
Oh, okay. We don't have any questions?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Jackson Hill.
Yes, Trustee Jackson Hale, please.
I'm gonna put out there that I'm new. Can someone please explain to me why the agreement was paused in the beginning, to begin with?
Thank you. I'll add some context and then the other seasoned board members as well. So at the beginning, the disruption came when we had Dr. Hada submit his resignation, so we had to deal with that. And then that opened up the superintendent search, starting that process. And so those two big monumental items delayed our progress in this. Did anybody want to add anything to that? Okay. Trustee Guzman.
Thank you. And Ben, if you wouldn't mind assisting me, from what I can recall, the council thought it was a good idea for us to pause when the superintendent resigned. Is that right, Mr. Mackey?
That is incorrect. Our coaching was that it would be important for the board to do community listening and set goals and priorities, because that would serve and undergird a superintendent search process. And so that was our recommendation, but
The board chose
board
to
has
do
decided
something
it is a
else.
different-
So the board
Correct.
chose to pause. It was a
Correct.
board choice. Okay. So, but it had to do with the superintendent search, because we had to find a superintendent search company, and it was going to take a lot of our time. And so we put a pause on it because we had to be invested, and we needed to spend time. There was a listening program, and we had to go through our policies and things like that. Brenda is open.
Thank you. Thank you. Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, Madam President. Superintendent searches at the Clark County School District get rather crazy. And the intent at that time was to do a quick one, knowing that we had a gap in leadership. And then the board stalled and delayed the process until we kicked it until next year for the new incoming members. When something like this happens and you're in limbo in between leadership, you tend to pause things and then wait for this one decision. So this is actually not the only thing that's on pause in CCSD. There's quite a few things that are in limbo, waiting for a leader to come on.
Thank you for that. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. The one thing that I also wanted to add is with this project, we were also going to be focusing on doing community meetings. At the same time, the superintendent search was also going to be doing community meetings. And Trustee Adam Johnson and I attended a training from NSBA, and their recommendation was really not doing it together. And we had a discussion that it was actually not going to be fruitful of actually getting what we needed, and it would be just too scrambled of all the things that we needed to set in place. So that was a big thing as well.
Thank you for that. Trustee Jackson Hale?
So just to clarify, only the contract has been completed. None of the work has been started.
We started the work in January. There was, as part of this timeline, there was some work done. Let's see. January, we had trustee meetings. Yeah. Trustee meetings. Oh, I cannot see this. I need double Zoom glasses. We conducted, as I believe Mr. Mackey may have shared, there was some work that was completed earlier in Q1 with the board. There was also several discussions. The council was, how else do I describe this? The council's, Ben, do you have additional insight in terms of the other work that's been done? I know that we in person met as a group and groups to help start this process.
Yes, to answer the question, work on the council's part was started and has continued throughout the process in terms of responses, meetings, putting together documents, taking feedback, conducting trainings. The board did not complete any of the deliverables other than the initial training. but work was done. But because there hasn't been significant motion, there is no additional invoice for hours beyond that already billed.
Got it. Thank you for that. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. And for myself, I really appreciated starting the year off like that so that we could set our strategic plans. So because I believe that us as a team need to know what we're doing to stay focused on student outcomes so that then we could share that with the superintendent so that person knows what we want, and then that person has to develop how it's going to get done. But that puts us in our role. We need to be able to tell the superintendent what it is to strive for and how we're going to allocate our budget towards that. And so I'm looking forward to getting to that. I was saddened that we had to pause it, but it was understandable. And I look forward to getting to the work. And I think it's a great investment. And I'm used to that kind of environment where you do the strategic planning so that you can give the one employee that we do have direction on what is our priority and what are the guardrails for that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Esparza-Strophigan?
Hello, Ben. Thank you for joining us again. Good to see you. So my questions, I kind of just want to frame it on the calendar, and because of the fact that we're just going to have a lot of new members, potentially new board council, and new superintendent. So Ben, my question to you is, you did specific interviews with each of us. So now what's the reset, because we have new members? And you also, we did a retreat with the previous superintendent. So I don't know, like, to me, it's like, I don't know that this is going to be the same strategic plan that is in front of me right now that needs to take place, is my question.
Absolutely. It's our recommendation that should the board continue to do this, we would need to restart the process. That doesn't necessarily meaning cut this contract and start a new contract, but potentially extend to it to be the 2 years and restart the process with the entire new board, meetings, individual, understanding what folks are trying to get out of it, doing a 2-day to create the common language, and then move forward with the plan, because the current plan and implementation plan that we put together based on the feedback from this board may not be the right implementation plan for the next board.
Thank you for that. Trustee Jackson-Hale?
So I was going to echo Trustee Esparza-Strophigan's comments, and then also try to clarify on the pricing if this did need to restart. And I do agree with Trustee Bustamante Adams that we do need to have some goals and objectives for the new superintendent. However, I think it's best to meet those goals when you are able to collaborate with each other and there's a shared understanding of how you are moving forward as the district.
Great, thank you for that. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I believe that Trustee Jackson-Hale and Trustee Esparza-Strophigan pretty much said it all, and I just don't see how, with so many members leaving and new members coming on, I have to say I agree with, again, with Trustee Bustamante Adams, sorry, trying to remember everybody's name here, that there is a framework within this that is useful, but if we do it ahead of time, we are going to be leaving out a key component of that collaborative, part there that we've already been able to enjoy and to be able to be a part of. And so I think that there's some way that we have to put that together, that we have to kind of, I'll use the president's favorite word there, merge. We're going to merge them and find out how we're going to do that. But to basically go on with this board right here and then have to try to cobble together something with a new board would be extremely difficult. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't know if that's my favorite word, Trustee Cavazos, merge. I have lots of favorite words. We should have some coffee and chat about your favorite word too. Trustee Johnson?
Thank you. Ben, can you remind me, once we come up with our priorities, how do we get, what was the way that we were supposed to get buy-in from the superintendent? Or was the superintendent supposed to be part of the process of creating some of those priorities? I know, but from what I recall, we were going to take input from our community, and that was going to help kind of shape the direction. And I cannot remember, I can't recall how the superintendent was supposed to work alongside us as we develop this. And I recognize that we are that person's, we are providing that person direction. And also realize that in my day-to-day work, I appreciate having some input on the goals that I'm trying to achieve. And so I can't remember how we were supposed to incorporate that person's input into the process.
It is our coaching that boards own the goal setting process, and they use two key information pieces to set the goals. Number one is community input about what we want, the vision and values of our community, what we want us to accomplish, and the values that we have to maintain as we pursue that vision. And second is a district data and root cause analysis about what's the realities of our district currently and what are the highest levers to move forward. Oftentimes, the superintendent and administration put that together because they are the ones with the clearest line of sight on the day-to-day of it, and that the board then discusses and adopts the goals in collaboration with the superintendent, or if they don't have a superintendent, an interim or whoever is leading the district at that time.
All right,
It is helpful to have input from administration. Not necessarily you have to have a superintendent in place, because you can still get information around the data and root causes that the administration is seeing, because folks on the ground are still seeing this work day in and day out. And those priorities oftentimes help illustrate to superintendents that you may be considering hiring what they're going to be expected to do. And some superintendents will have accomplished things in those veins, and others might not have ever done anything with that. So for instance, if one of your goals is you end up saying we need to focus on making sure our emergent bilingual students are achieving and closing gaps compared to peers, that might influence what types of superintendents you're looking for and what types of experience they might have had.
That's really helpful, Ben. Thank you for the clarification. And just a quick plug for the process. I had the opportunity to, while in Dallas at the Council of Great City Schools, Ben invited me to one of the community meetings that they had. So I attended it on Saturday morning, and it was a great, it was a really good way for, the process was strong, but then most importantly, it was really good to see a variety of community members, and there were no two people in that room were the same, but to come to a conclusion of what they thought was important and to be able to submit that feedback to board members, and then to know that they were going to redo that process 14 additional times to collect a variety of data points. So I'm hopeful that when we go through our process, we can do something very similar.
Great, thank you for that. Ben, I'm curious, when it comes to, you mentioned the staff on the ground, or in this case, like I akin that to staff of the superintendent, their chiefs, things of that nature. When in transitions, when you notice, what have you noticed during transitions of a superintendent? Like earlier, we were having a conversation around body of knowledge, right, being transferred. Like what have you noticed when it comes to like the changes and shifts at the top in leadership with the superintendent and its relationship to its chiefs, I guess like vice presidents, whatever they're called in other school districts, but for here, it's like the equivalent would be like the people who directly report to the superintendent, who would probably be contributing to that data analysis. What do you notice during those types of shifts and changes in leadership, or if there's like any trends or insight that you can share with us?
I don't think are the trends that we have seen from across the nation as this happens. We see superintendent searches take a variety of different ways, from 2 weeks to a year. Trends are, number one is leadership matters and consistency matters in some way, shape, and form. It's really helpful if the organization understands and sees the direction that we're trying to go as an organization. Our coaching is that boards can help accomplish that and set that by saying, like, clearly defining their priorities and what they are expecting whoever the superintendent is and what that looks like going forward. I think it's always a question around senior staff is who's the next person going to be, how much changes are going to be, should I start looking for other places, et cetera. And as we know generally, the oftentimes some of the most effective staff are the ones that are able to first leave and leave if they're worried about the future. So I think anything a board can do to create consistency and clarity and stability is a big win for the staff of the organization. That's just learnings from what we've seen across the nation. Obviously, every context is unique and different.
Thank you. I think that also plays out to the social sector, to corporate sector. Anytime there are shifts at the top, there will be shifts around it. And it's just important to keep in mind as decisions are made, I guess, for the body, as the body decides moving forward, something to keep in mind around consistency. Trustee Baron?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Yes, for the record, how much has this board already spent on the Council of the Great City Schools for this training? And if we already spent the money, is it still being held on an account? So where if the board, if and when the board decides to go ahead and continue with the training, will there be additional costs related to it, or do we get the pre-stoppage price?
So if the board chooses to terminate, then it is just a clean termination. There is no additional invoice, and the board has spent the $60,000 that compensates for all of the time spent by myself and AJ Grable over the time this year. And if the board were to restart after termination of the contract, we'd have to go through that. It would likely look the same and be up to $60,000 contract, dependent on hours and how far it goes. If the board wanted to pause and wanted to say, you know what, we still want to continue this work. There's been this year-long pause. We're recommitted to this next 2 years, and we go through the process with the new board to understand what people are hoping to get out of it, set all of that. We could negotiate so it wouldn't have to be a full restarted new contract. And I can't make that decision myself, but it would be less expensive than the stopping and then fully restarting at another time. That said, just my 2 cents is candidly, I think the most important thing that Clark County School District considers is what governance framework, how are we going to move forward with setting priorities for our district, monitoring priorities for the district and our line of our district. If the Council of Great City Schools can help with that, we would love to. If it's not us, we still think that's the most important question to answer.
Just to follow up. Well, since the quorum, the voting quorum of this board will be changing. I just think it's kind of a big decision, and I think that's left best. I think for the newest board to come in. We've been talking about money left and right, and sometimes it seemed like $5,000 was a lot of money. For when we were asking for discussions to be held in North Las Vegas, and that seemed to be like a lot of money, and so 60 grand sounds like a lot of money too. I do appreciate you answering the question, and so it's my thought that this is a decision that'd be best left to the next board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to call up, no, I don't want to call up. Trustee Brooks. I think I'm going to go down the queue. Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, Madam President. I see this is not an action item. It seems like maybe the intent is to gauge the interest of the board, whether or not they want to continue with this process. So even though the board cannot vote on it, maybe they should voice whether or not they would like a future agenda item to consider continuing the work.
Right, I've heard a mixture of responses, and some of it, like most recently, like we should wait until the new body is appointed, elected, or takes the oath of office, excuse me. We should wait. We should move forward with this work. Once they begin, we should make that decision. So that's what I'm hearing from just some consensus, and I appreciate you bringing us back to that. Trustee Jackson Hale.
Thank you, Madam President. I do echo that I think this is something that the next board should maybe make the decision on. One of the things that I see on here is draft board goals, the vision, and guardrails values. So just based on my knowledge of the board before I joined, it didn't exactly seem like everyone is on the same page. So how does this work, especially like how does Council of Great City Schools work with the board so that there is kind of a general working consensus on the work? So that this is not something, this timeline is something that stretches really long, and then potentially there's additional fees that are added on because there's no common ground on how the board is working together.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll, thank you for that, for your perspective and insight. And I'll simply share that based off of the conversations we shared earlier. No, I'm going to go to Trustee Cavazos before I go into that and share my piece.
Would you like me to answer that?
Oh, yes, please, Ben, thank you.
I would just note the way the contract is structured, if the board follows through on its implementation plan, it's written into the contract that there is no additional cost because the board has followed through on what it is committed to do. So no matter how many hours we spend on it, there is no additional cost beyond the initial 60. It is only an additional cost if the hours are not contained within that 60,000 and the board terminates and does not finish the work. As far as the actual functioning of the timeline, if a board, generally when we work with this, we establish a work structure. The board president and or superintendent will meet periodically with the Council of Great City Schools. We'll talk about updates. There will be updates shared with the board, usually on a monthly or a bi-monthly schedule on where we're at. It is natural that timelines change and adjust between, hey, we need an extra month for community listening, or we're not quite ready to do this, or we're going to pause. That is totally natural. There is no additional cost for that. The deliverables in the implementation plan are the deliverables. And if the board follows through on completing the implementation plan that it adopted, then there is never any additional fee, unless there's something totally outside of scope that the board asks for.
Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, and thank you, Ben, because that was part of my question, to just kind of clarify that, which you did very well. I'm just wondering here if, since this is something that is listed as a discussion item, that in pertaining to Trustee Brooks's suggestion that we possibly may not want, as it's not agendized as any kind of an action meeting, item, that we might be going a bit maybe into the weeds a bit as far as trying to get some kind of feeling from everyone, unless it's something where the board president wanted to table this possibly, because of the discussion about waiting for the new board. We have a contract, so I think we have set on this agenda that this is a discussion of where we're at right now. And I think to go further into that would be a problem because it's not agendized in that manner.
Yeah, and certainly I would not allow us to break open meeting law. So grateful, thank you for those insights, Trustee Cavazos. And I simply will add, thank you, Ben. I'm grateful for your insight today and your piece and providing us update in terms of where we have been and where we could go for the future when it comes to governance. I think the one thing that I'll add here, colleagues, is reinforce the importance of establishing some sort of process or some sort of agreement that will allow this body to be successful through consistency. This body has a habit, that's maybe too much of a strong word, but there's a pattern of behavior, which I guess could be considered a habit, a pattern of behavior that exists that where we like start and stop, start and stop, when it's certainly with contractors. And this is just a warning. That may be, I want that to, I would want the board to not fall into that trap in the future, right? Especially because the nature of this body is that it is always, there will be always people rotating off. And so it will just take courage for this body to create a consistent, streamlined effort of ongoing training that will allow us to be successful on behalf of students. All right, this concludes this particular item. Thank you, Mr. Mackey, for your time and for your attention this evening.
Thank you all. Great to be with you.
Take care, be well. All right, colleagues, now we're going to move on to 2.04. This is an action item. And this is an action item. So if there are members of the public who would like to provide public comment on this item, please submit your yellow card. Otherwise, once I finish my presentation, I will no longer be accepting yellow public speaker cards. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right, colleagues. So we just had a very robust conversation about the various work streams. This board made a decision. Well, there's really no action here, but verbally we talked in a general consensus that we should focus on the next 60 days. And of course, when I developed this agenda, I did not anticipate where we would land, but I'm grateful that we had this conversation. And I'm grateful that we had this conversation specifically because I think it's important what I'm hearing the board is to have a desire to focus and create a laser focus on just the very near future, like right now, like what we can see in front of us, right? Like 10 steps ahead. I've heard over and over through various conversations and insights from members that we should perhaps wait until January to make decisions that are significant and have changed. So I just know that I'm present to those two pieces. And because of that, I also think in an effort to create focus, the body would benefit tremendously from making shifts to its board committee structure. There are a handful of committees that are required by law. And you'll see here, actually, I'm going to highlight Appendix A, GP15, board committees. This is the list of committees. Now, there are some committees on this list, comprehensive list of committees. This is very comprehensive list of committees that exist by the board. We'll plug in here and mention that committees by the board are required to abide by open meeting law. That's a function of a board of trustees committee. So if we appoint someone or appoint a body of people, they must adhere to OML. If they are, I don't know that we've had any OML violations recently in committees, but this is again a group that has different committees and must abide by OML if they're a committee of the board. There's some room to evaluate this particular policy, colleagues. And forgive me, I also didn't mention GP15 board committees. This is also a list of various committees that exist for the board. The several that are required by NRS are the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Committee, Coalition, the Debt Management Commission, which I'm currently appointed to, both of those. NRS required, less NRS required, but in regulation is NIAA. And that is the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association Board of Control. Thank you, Trustee Cavazos, for your steadfast leadership in on that committee. Those are the three that are required by NRS. Okay. Okay. So I want to just present the board to two things. There are some committees that are required by NRS. There are some committees that are created by the board, require, let's see, they require OML process. They must publicly notice their agendas. They must publicly notice, they must take actions, just like the board does on action items, not deliberate through outside of the public eye and more than a majority. That is what's required of committees. So I would just, not necessarily at this point seeking a perspective for colleagues to consider, that there is a lot that you have coming up that we all have coming up in the new year. And this body could really benefit from focusing its energy and efforts on primarily committing to the committees of the board that are only required by NRS. You have a significant change, a wave of change that's coming in 2025 for this body, and that change will come with some growth and stretching. And so I really just encourage this body to consider what it looks like for the board to only dedicate its time and energy, and primarily the president or the vice president, the officers who manage aspects of, in this case, I have primarily been the one interacting with committees other than members who actually serve on them. If there are issues or challenges that come up, they come to the board president, and it's a lot, y'all. It's a lot. Plus, we have the opportunity to, again, refocus our energy and time by committing to the things that are the most important for this body. So if that is the case, it allows the body to really narrow its focus and its attention on onboarding its newest members, on finding a superintendent, a permanent superintendent, on finding its board counsel, and not allowing the committees to become unwieldy because of lack of focus that's required on all these other fronts. What can happen is that their committees can kind of take shape of their own. All right, I see members in the queue. Do we have public comment on this particular item? Okay, great, I'll take that, and then I'll go into queue, colleagues. You're welcome to stay in the queue. Oh, or not, okay, go back. No, you're good, you're good. All right, Mr. Lopez, and then Al Lopez, are you present? Yes, thank you, Al. Followed by Abraham Gamejo.
Good evening, trustees. My name is Alfonso Lopez. I'm actually the Bond Oversight Chair, Committee Chair Member. It's ALFONSOLOPEZ. First off, I want to thank Ms. Trustee Lola Brooks and my executive committee for extensive time that's already been put into the revision of these bylaws that you guys are going to be talking about today. I wanted to elaborate on one of the key issues that is a sticky point amongst the board themselves, and that's the liaison position. There's talk about getting rid of this position, but I can tell you on the record that the majority of the committee members are totally against this. Even past board members came to our last board meeting and spoke up against this. It's such a critical and valuable position that we all would like to keep in place. We are having ongoing discussions still. It's been tabled, or not tabled, but at our next BOC meeting, we will be discussing the responsibilities of this and stuff to go over, to bring to you guys to make your decisions. I know it's been brought to my attention that you guys can go ahead and make these decisions without, but I'm here to ask to keep us in mind that we do want to discuss these issues and bring something finalized for you guys to discuss. I don't know if it'll be you guys or it will be the new board members, but that's the plan that we have on the BOC. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. I just want to clarify that we are not discussing bond oversight bylaws today, colleagues. We are simply discussing committees at large. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Abraham, come on up.
Abraham Camejo for the record, Camejo. Good evening, Madam Chair, members, and Superintendent. Hello. And for the record, Dodgers are champions. I'm also part of the Bond Oversight Committee, and I would just like to make some suggestions when the time comes up when you guys will be discussing this. As Mr. Lopez said, that we are discussing our bylaws moving forward. I believe that the Bond Oversight Committee should also meet quarterly with the AZAC committee, because we're talking about zoning, and then we got to try to build a school, and we kind of go hand in hand. So if you guys feel comfortable, maybe we could have a quarterly, every 6 months type of meeting, joint, so we can actually get to know each other as well. Maybe that'll open up. Also, I also believe that the Bond Oversight Committee should also be part of the oversight panel for school facilities, make it part of the bond oversight. Why? Because we are managing and funding the construction. So who else better than to ask for funds for our construction for all our schools than the construction guys? So, and then that way we can help get the funds for our bond and continue fixing and remodeling and having the adequate tools necessary for our school district. Also, I would actually like to see if the Board of Trustees can also incorporate maybe adding a facilities director at our meetings, and then also maybe incorporate the facilities aspect of it, so that way we can actually work to figure out solutions, because it goes hand in hand. So I'll give you an example. Like last meeting, we were talking about the air conditioning being an issue, because it's not part of the bond oversight committee, but it goes hand in hand. If we're not discussing the air conditioning issue, how to prevent it, how to maintain it, how can we spend the money to maintain it before it breaks? So it's like your home. If you got an air conditioning unit and you're not maintaining it, and then you got to go buy a $10,000 unit. Our school air conditioning units are in the millions. They're expensive. So if we can actually incorporate a facilities portion of it together with the construction, with bond oversight committee, then that way we can help give the tools necessary for Brandon's team and everybody else in the district, and say, hey, we can actually come with better recommendations for the trustees, and then that way you guys can vote on how these allocations can be spent accordingly, so that way our school district can be up, running, working, and we can continue focusing on the achievement of our schools. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Abraham. This is again, thank you for that insight, and I want to reference that these committees, for example, the Bond Oversight Committee is an advisory committee. They provide input from the board and identify issues of concern to the BOC. And I'm grateful that you brought up liaisons. I don't think that I really considered that as part of this work that is involved, not only involves the president in overseeing appointments, ensuring monitoring member participation. We each, those of us, have the ability to, those of us who are appointed right now to these committees or sign up for them, there is some committees have there are some differences with some committees. For example, Bond Oversight have, Bond Oversight Committee members have a liaison. And I believe that it's a liaison that exists for each member. The Board of Trustees has one liaison. There's 11 of us. We do not have. And we have, I would say, significantly larger body of work that exists, where we are meeting 3 times a month plus behind the scenes work. So that's actually, we're so grateful that you brought that up, because that is a discrepancy that exists for us in terms of committees. If this body continues to have committees that are not NRS related, it really should benefit from, it would benefit tremendously from, we would benefit tremendously from having a chance to overview all committee bylaws that would allow us to create some equity and ensure that we also continue to be the deciding body and not committees who may have perceptions. There may be some disconnect between perceptions of what they have the ability to do and what we are asking them to do, and that requires training. And I would say a body of work exists too there. So add that to the 90-plus day, 60-plus day training for on members, because I don't know that I've ever trained members on preparing their appointed members for, like, I've not facilitated any type of training, and I think part of the lessons learned in this role is that there would be a tremendous amount of benefit from having some consistency on how our members are selected and appointed to each committee, if that's what the body chooses to do in the future. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a couple of questions here. First of all, is this list, I'm going to reference both GP 15 board committees with page 2 of 3, where the number of members is listed, and also Appendix A, GP 15 board committees. Is this fully updated? I found a couple of places here where it looks like maybe we missed a couple of things. So is it updated?
That's a good point. This was last updated in 2017 and 2017. So that's part of the work that needs to, if the body continues to have committees, it definitely needs a refresh and an update.
Yes, because we, just a couple examples, like on American Education Week, I thought that had been removed. I'm not sure, or maybe I just don't know who our 2 members are. And then NIAA, when I first came onto the board, it was 2 trustees, but now it's only 1, so that's been quite a while on that. And some of the other ones that are listed on Appendix A on GP 15, I don't know that we actually have any trustee representatives on some of these right now. So I guess my overall question, I can understand that this needs to be refreshed, completely understand. So I guess what I'm asking for tonight's item, what is our actual ask of the board?
Thanks for that, Trustee Cavazos, and for noticing that there are some maybe in practice changes, but not have been updated here. So for example, NIAA would benefit from indicating that there is 1, board member and then 1 staff member of the district based off of regulation or policy or practice. So it would want to clean up things like that. And 2, this, maybe, and this is premature because I would like to hear my colleagues' insight too, but I think that there is a need for this board, for our board to really narrow its focus. And I guess what I'm trying to say without saying it, without creating an action, is that we would benefit tremendously from removing committees that are not required by NRS.
Could you, we'd be able to state for the public, because I've already gotten that question, and I think some of the newer board members would like to know too, specifically, which committees would we be doing away with actually having a trustee be part of?
So I'll answer that by what we'd keep based off of NRS that's required of us. The Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition, Debt Management Commission. There may be, I want to say NIAA, there is a NRS, even though it's not listed in here. And what is Community Council? We even have a member on the Council of Great City Schools. We can get rid of that. And what's the other one? Forgive me? Yeah, that was it. There was 3? That's 3. 3. Okay. Anything else, Trustee Cavazos?
So those would be the only ones?
Oh, yes, Sex Ed, forgive me, is another one. I thought an audit committee was as well. No?
Okay, so
Audit.
if I'm understanding correctly, just to
Sex
clarify,
And
there would only be 4 that would be kept, and we would be doing away with, because there's some other mistakes on here too, like the School Board Student Advisory Committee, 1 member, I was the last one that was on that, and that was before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And it's not formulated like that anymore, it's under the superintendent. So you're saying that those would be the only committees that we would keep, and we would do away then with all the other ones that are listed here?
That's
We
one
would
way.
do away with the trustee
That's what
representation?
that's what I'm recommending. Again, I shared earlier, my thought was like, hey, this is premature, given I want to have a discussion around it, and there are members in the queue, so I'm going to
Okay,
turn
I
it
just
over to
wanted to
them.
clarify. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
no problem. Let's see. Thank you. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I am concerned about this because when I first started as a trustee, I was on bond oversight, and I learned a lot. And it assisted me in the way that I viewed things, so that that I had extra information. And the same thing with NASB. I was on NASB when I first started, and that was a very positive thing for me. I am concerned about taking trustees off. Now, like, for example, I'm on the school naming committee, and I'm the chair. I'm concerned about me not being the chair, and that a trustee is not the chair of the school naming committee. We still need to have a school naming committee. So there are definitely issues with that, and I'm wondering if that if there is an issue with a trustee not being able to spend that kind of time on a committee if we can't reach out to other trustees. Because I remember when Trustee Cavazos was president, she reached out to me personally and said, listen, bond oversight takes a lot of time. It just does. And she was very open, very honest with me when I made that commitment. She wanted me to understand what that commitment was. Even when I appoint people, I call Joe to ensure that by policy I'm appointing the correct folks. So I just feel like maybe we are doing something that could hurt this board in the future. And that's just, I mean, I feel like we've weeded out quite a few, but by asking trustees not to be on those committees, I just, for me, I think that we're preventing them from learning important parts of the district. I had no idea what bond oversight was before I came on this board. And now I realize how critical it is. And then also, for someone like me who focuses in on curriculum, and assessments, it was really important for me to know. I have a school right now who is very upset about the coverage of their playground. But I was able, because Brandon explained it to me, I was able to explain it to the community exactly what was going on. Are they still sending emails? Absolutely, because they don't want me to forget. It is not because they don't understand. It's because they don't want me to forget. And so I feel like trustees do need to be a part of these committees.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Trustee Guzman. I'm going to turn it over. Let's see, Trustee Esparza-Straffigan?
Just a logistic question. Can appointed trustees serve on these committees?
That's a good question.
Yes, and
Who is that?
That was her
That was
thinking
me.
sound, in case you were
Yes, that was my
wondering.
thinking sound.
Okay.
That was a, forgive me. I am a mother of a toddler. I do make sounds like that often, very frequently. Thank you for that question, and I would love to give council some time to provide some insight for us. Yeah, and maybe they may need some more time. Yeah, more than 30 seconds, so that's something that they need to research and look into, also based off of the notes that Council Malich left for us. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, John Okazaki, for the General Counsel, for the record. I don't have that answer yet, but I can definitely research it very quickly and provide an answer to all of you. Yeah, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Maybe at our next,
I could.
yeah, oh, today, or, no,
No,
please.
no, but I mean,
please.
I could do it via email or something. You don't have, we don't have to wait for next meeting. I can just
Thank you.
advise all of you at the same time.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, I'm
Justice
not
Burgess.
done.
Okay. Yeah, please, go
Okay.
ahead, yeah.
So knowing the answer I heard was potentially yes, so there's now potentially 11 of us. We have new folks coming. I attended more than one meeting, and I agree with Trustee Guzman. Here's the thing, I think people have real laser focus on certain issues, maybe because they have certain experience and background. So I guess the question I'm asking is what is the problem to fix here? Is there a problem to solve? I don't know that we need to change this right now, because I know I would love to be on a committee or even more than one. I have the time. So I'm willing to say that, speaking as an individual, I'd like that information about Mr. Ogazaki. Thank you for communicating so that we'll know when we can participate. And not everyone can participate. We understand that. So that's the beauty of us having different lives and schedules, and 11 people. Thank you, Trustee Johnson. Got you.
Cool, thank you. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I do recall us having a meeting, though. It was a closed session where the answer was given. And how does that work? If we already know the answer?
So this is, was hoping to not bring in the closed session because it's privileged information. And no, I know, yes, and we have a new council. That's something just to be mindful of in the future. Some of it has been logistical, so I'll take it from that point to like what, forgive me, Trustee Zamora, and I don't mean to, like, this is my stuff, right? Like, not you, it's my stuff. Like, we were given direction, right? We were like, hey, this exists, this is a possibility, right? For our members, newest members to add committee members. There are logistics associated with that fell on the president. That's me. It was added to my list and stayed at the bottom of my list, not on purpose, not intentionally. But I think that this is part of the conversation, is that it is the role of the president, especially when there are frequent and ongoing requests from that are not focused on student outcomes or in policy, really creates distractions for the board, and in full transparency for the board president, because now I'm having to, well, I'm gonna have to think about this, and then like think about what strategy here we're gonna make sure that we're aligned moving forward. I think I'm speaking in generalities without like talking about something specific, right? But that has happened all year long, actually, and it's been pretty painful to experience, because it's prevented me from focusing on ensuring that committees have OML training, ensuring that committees are aligned to the work that they're expected to do, and not thinking about other priorities that they make up on their own. So it's been tough. You had a question specifically.
So as you mentioned, I had an original question, but you just triggered another question.
Yeah.
Because you're saying it's a responsibility of the president to do the trainings for these committees. So what is the role of the member then? Can't the member, like, for example, Trustee Brooks, they just mentioned, Trustee Brooks is helping the committee, bond oversight, do all these things, redo their policies. So does it fall on the president, or does it fall on the member that's in the committee?
I think it's a combination, and it is committee members, right? Willingness to follow the guidance of the trustee. It is the trustees who appoint members, and to some degree, also staff who interact with them. But I mean, the dynamics, again, is something to be mindful of there.
Okay. Well, my original question was, I actually agree with my colleagues. We have 11 members now, and actually Trustee Bustamante and I were kind of giggling over here because we didn't realize NASB had so many of these seats open. And I do want to say they are very time consuming. I think I'm serving, I think, as the I sit on the legislative committee and then plus an executive committee. And then somehow I'm also under as a regular board member on their website. And, Trustee Bustamante Adams is on their executive committee as well as their vice president. She just has a really huge role. So knowing that we have these open spots and we can expand it more, I would love to see that and how we move forward. I do not agree with us not participating in these committees because there's some committees that look, Clark County Parks and Recreations, I think it's an opportunity we're missing of building our relationships with outside entities. And as we talk about building these bridges with everyone else, we would go backwards with something like this.
Thanks for that insight. And the reason you're listed twice on the NASB is because you fill two roles. Just know that by function that has we have the capacity and we set it up in a time. Thank you, Trustee Zamora, for that insight and for sharing your willingness to expand and share the love. Yeah, Trustee Baron.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I regret that I was never asked to sit on any of these committees because just the other day I happened to be looking at them. It came up because oftentimes things come by my desk as a city councilman that kind of like interact and overlap with what the school district is doing. And primarily, the primary role of a trustee is to provide informed oversight over the school district more than anything else, but removing the participation, which actually should probably be something where, and I think it's written into one of the board policies, though. There actually should be a duty for each and every member to serve at least on one committee, right? I'm sure we could probably find time. Some of these committees only meet quarterly, some as needed, and I think we have enough strength to be able to share the load amongst others and be able to provide to this board that informed oversight function. Furthermore, this removing most of the participation by the trustees, elected or appointed on this, represents a major board policy change. And I would strongly encourage the voting members to not support this, as just yesterday we had, the public has already spoken. They've already spoken, they've made their choice, and we will have, again, we'll have, the people who will come in they represent a voting quorum. And I don't think it's appropriate for this board to make changes so close to the new board being sworn in. And maybe maybe they feel in the future, maybe the Sex Education Committee, Advisory Committee, maybe that's not going to be something that has a high priority. Perhaps they might decide there's going to be a Special Education Committee because of so many cases that seem to come across, even in litigation. There might be something, for instance, another committee that might need to be made. Hey, a school safety committee for our employees and for our teachers, right? And maybe that could even be substituted. But I really do believe that it is appropriate, and it's most appropriate to be left to the next board that's coming in that will be for better or for worse. It's going to be dramatically different from our existing board. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Baron. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I think there might be two different conversations occurring. Some members keep referring to removing the liaison. It sounded like the ask was to remove the committees and ask the board to provide direct oversight themselves. Am I misunderstanding the ask? Are you just
forgive me, I'm trying to focus when there's some feedback on this side. There's maybe some misinterpretations. Trustee Brooks, can you restate that, please?
Yes. Some members have stated that the request is just to remove the liaisons from the committee versus removing the committee and asking the board to provide oversight directly of those items.
And can you describe what the latter part is?
So for instance, when bond oversight was formed, the trustees did not get a quarterly briefing on the CIP. Now they do. So that function doesn't need to exist at that level because we already do that ourselves. And then we also have more frequent presentations. Somebody asked the questions about what are some of the challenges. The challenges are these committees are designed to provide advisory opinions to the board, and there's not a feedback loop for them to do so. So they're supposed to provide an advisory guidance opinion to the full board, not like call individual members, but they're supposed to come here. They're supposed to say, based on all of these things that we did, we recommend this plan. The problem is, we get this information now. So we've already met with staff, we already have a briefing, we already do all of these things. We're in a different place than we were when they were formed. I don't think that the board should make a decision. I agree with that point. I think one thing that I noticed when I went into this committee is they have never received any training from the board, and we have a policy that requires it. So that's why I took that on. I did provide them with training. Many of them seemed quite surprised about what the definition of governance was. So, like, none of these committees have any training from the board, and they also don't necessarily know how the board functions. So, I mean, that's a real challenge because you have, and it's not just this committee, there's several committees who ask for items that are very time intensive, that if a board member asked, they'd have to go through a vetting process. They are interacting with staff in a way that the board doesn't do. I think the challenge is we have very clear policy about what is supposed to be occurring, and it doesn't reflect reality of what is occurring in these committees. And there's not a feedback mechanism for us to get any of this advisory opinion. So it doesn't really seem to be for a purpose. I think you could definitely resolve it by making sure that there's a feedback loop, making sure there's training, make sure, like, there's a part here that says the board has to approve these objectives, determine the timeline. The board has never, I've been here 8 years, this has never happened. So it requires a really deep conversation about the fundamentals of these committees. I think there's a purpose, and I think that the problem is, like, if there's not a feedback loop, you kind of lose it.
Trustee Brooks, in your experience with committees in general, have you firsthand had experience with committees asking for items that, for example, if board members were to ask for an item that's requires more than 10 minutes of staff time, would be declined?
I think the problem is not just on the committee. Clearly, the problem is there is a training issue from the board members themselves, making sure that their appointees understand what their expectations are. There also is an obligation from board members that if your appointee is acting outside of that, that you have a conversation with them. That is the expectation I think staff has for us. I don't know that it's ever been like publicly stated that that's, so when you do onboarding, I think that is a conversation you have with new members, that you aren't afraid to have a conversation about those expectations and that you hold people accountable, because some of these departments have high turnover and it's related to these committees. So I think it would really be a valuable conversation to make sure that they're not wasting their time. Like they're spending time away from their families to come and serve on these committees. And I think they want to make use of their time. We want it to be useful. And we don't want it to be a situation where the staff member who's building school, their full-time job is just managing requests for information that is not actually in the scope of a committee. Like, I need them to build schools.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks, for that perspective and that separation. And colleagues, hear you loud and clear. There is a desire not to make any shifts to this policy. And at the same time, it is a consideration as you're developing what the next 60 days looks like to review and evaluate these policies, the training that you provide to new members, and the training that you offer to committee as well, so that you don't, create more challenges for yourself and for ourselves and for our staff. Trustee Bustamante Adams, you're next.
Sorry, thank you, Madam President. So for me, it is evident that we need to revisit this. Some of the information is missing from here if it was last updated in 2017. So I agree with Trustee Barron, not necessarily in the next 60 days, but let the new team evaluate. But it does take up a lot of our time, and so we have to be strategic. Does it meet the priorities that we want to set? And use an evaluation tool to be able to see if, have we provided training? Is there bylaws? And do we provide a feedback loop? And maybe we don't need the entity because we already have that information in our briefing. So just an evaluation tool so that we could be strategic with our time and make sure that these committees serve the purpose that we have as far as priorities. So yes, I agree with that.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Stravagin?
So I want to first thank the gentleman for taking time from their day and staying with us through it all. And I know we're trying to get to public comment, but I do want to say a few things just as a process person. So if we're doing onboarding for trustees, we should probably have codified an onboarding process for all of these committees. So that's something that I think I'm more than happy to assist anyone if I'm just putting myself out there and everybody is busy. But I know it's our officers, I know you're busy as well, but that's one thing. The other thing is I'd love to get feedback from everyone that's on these committees. What is their experience? What are their challenges? What's been helpful? We had a nice acknowledgement with Trustee Brooks because of her valuable institutional knowledge and her ability to step in a committee that was vacant for some time. A trustee was gone and not giving that support and coaching. And then the other thing I would say is a layer, like we're doing for anybody new, is why are we not pairing people? Someone that's new with someone that has more experience on each committee. So it's giving them a mentor so that they can learn. So those are three things, and I'm happy to sit with any of the officers to provide any kind of assistance with follow up with that.
Great, thank you for that. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I think this discussion has been really fruitful. Some things I think that, like just logistically, we need an updated list before we can make any kind of a decision on this. The other thing I'm hearing is that, that several of us already expressed that we do not want our representation to go away. But then again, I'm going to go back to the most recent, Trustee Bustamante Adams, that we need to be strategic and we need to look at what we're able to do. Example, even on PBS, I asked to be on PBS, and I have had trouble getting to some of the meetings. Some of them are virtual. Most of them, they encourage in person. And so I feel badly when I'm not able to get there, but they are very good about keeping me updated. So we need an updated list. The community likes to see us show up. Sometimes they're not there for the bond oversight, but they see if somebody is there. And as Trustee Esparza-Stravagin just brought up, Trustee Williams was, former Trustee Williams, was the representative on the two committees that just recently had to be reappointed. And she had not been there, as far as I know, had not been there for a long time, what I've been told. So kind of hearsay. But that is when when Trustee Brooks took over on bond oversight, appointed by the president. And then President Garcia Morales bravely stepped up, and we voted her in on to take over former trustees Williams' other responsibility. I think that with the light that's being shown on us right now for not being transparent and accountable, I think that the new board can probably come to some kind of a compromise consensus on being strategic, efficient use of time, but not basically, going away from that. Last thing, real quick, historical knowledge. When I came on the board in 2017, Trustee Brooks was 8 months ahead of me on that. And we did have trustee reports, because I can remember Carolyn Edwards, Trustee Edwards, would give wonderful reports on NIAA. Dr. Young would talk about, she was on Council of Great City Schools, and we limited the reports to 3 minutes. And we also had, we had several reports, and it was on part of the agenda, so we got to see the connection between the committee and the trustees. So the public, in one fell swoop, got to have that information. And I also want to just real quickly give a shout out to Dr. Larson Mitchell, because I have talked to her personally about possibly getting a safety committee. I get so many emails on that, and I was one of the representatives on the safety committee. And I want to thank you personally, Dr. Larson Mitchell, for your input on that.
Great, thank you. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Just one more point regarding the liaison part. If this is truly, and this is a conversation that I actually had with Dr. Alsbury towards the tail end of my term, if these committees are kept as purely advisory, then the committee should be made up of the community, and the point of the liaison is to provide checks and balances and to kind of make sure that they stay on task. So they wouldn't attend meetings, they would be called in to mediate situations. The feedback loop for the committee should be the committee members. They actually go, they form an opinion, they send their chair comes and they advocate for additional things that they want to see happen. Like, for instance, if the committee talks about, hey, here's what we're hearing, here's some goals, the board should hear that. And then when they go to do strategic planning, for instance, they should consider those in their goals. And like, it's a whole shift that would need to be required. And the liaison part is really, the point of the committee is to have an opinion that is outside of the board itself. And the board member is not the person who needs to report it, it's the committee. And that's the part that's really lacking. I think there could be incredible value, but it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of like a shifting of a mindset, and it's going to be challenging. So I hope you put in the effort and push through, but it's going to be a lot of effort.
Challenge accepted. Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Thank you. All right, colleagues. That concludes this item. I don't see any action items on this piece, and we've already taken public comment, so we are set. We're going to move on to items 3.01. It's public comment on items not listed on the agenda. Before I open this item, if you have not completed a public comment card, a yellow public speaker card, please do so now. Otherwise, once we begin, we will no longer accept. Salud. We will no longer accept public speaker cards. Let's see. We'll begin with Autumn Tampa.
Autumn Tampa, speaking as an individual. It is nice to see and hear everyone tonight. I know I've been away for a while, but I've had a lot of things to take care of and made some important changes in my life. It's great to hear the conversation and the different opinions. And I love the new appointed board members because I think they add a brand new dimension that was somewhat lacking. I have been coming to school board meetings for 18 years. 18 years, okay? I've been in the district for 26 years. I've worked at over 160 schools. I have worked with over 30,000 children, either as a WIDA tester, a substitute teacher, an SBTA, a reading tutor. So I have had a lot of experience in this district. And I know some of you really respect and value that, and I appreciate it, but I don't think that you're looking at the resources you have. And I have said this before, and I say it to each group of board members that come in. You need to reach out to, number one, your employees, and you need to reach out to the community, and you're not doing enough of that. School district employees do not know what's going on, okay? You need to find a way to communicate it to them, not say, okay, come and sit for 4 hours at a meeting, give up the time with your kids, skip dinner, be freezing cold in a room with no heat. You're not making the best use of what your assets are. 26 years of experience, and I'm not the only one, okay? There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Get some community committees. NRS is great, but things haven't been going grand, okay? And I've been watching this stuff for 26 years, and I've been trying to advocate, and I don't see enough change. And I'm going to tell you, the changes the board has made, in my opinion, have not been positive ones. I think we're heading back in a better direction, and I hope you continue that. The original things that I wanted to speak about was no heat in school buildings. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if you guys just like 50 degrees, 45 degrees, children wearing coats all day. But that is one of the most important things, and that has been going on for 26 years. So I'm not really sure why. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is all the thrown away food at breakfast time especially, and at lunch. And I know that those programs are mandated by federal laws. However, if a child gets it's a breakfast and they only have 5 minutes to eat it and then they've got to clean up, they're not going to be able to eat it. And they're being forced to take things they don't want to. And then I could go on about substitute teachers. Can I sign up for another minute? But there's so many things that I want to share and be a part of and be a solution, but I don't have an opportunity to. And quite honestly, I don't feel like coming and sitting for 4 hours to speak 3 minutes. So anybody going to grant me another minute?
No, I'm sorry, Ms. Member.
Are you not allowed to do that anymore?
Autumn, thank you, Autumn.
Bad change.
Thank you, Autumn. Going to move on to Jan Porter.
Hi, my name is Jan Porter, Porter. I have something that's a real simple request and frankly below your pay grade and truly not worthy of your time, but we are in a timeline crunch and we need some policy oversight because we have a gap in leadership. I'd like the board to place on the agenda as soon as possible or give me direction on how to ask for the repeal of the prohibition of student team travel for international competitions. This was enacted during COVID through the superintendent's office, and the reason it's important is the vision of the Board of Trustees states all students progress in school and graduate prepared to succeed and contribute in a diverse global society. Last year, the students' robotics team from SECTA was invited to the World Championships in Houston, and they performed admirably. Now, this year, the team has been accepted for the Canadian Pacific Regional Competition in Vancouver, Canada in February. However, our roadblock is the COVID travel prohibition. This matter needs to be resolved as soon as possible in order for the team to meet some deadlines. Now, I just received this phone call this afternoon. I said I will volunteer to bring it to you guys. I've called the superintendent's office, the alternative services office, and spoke to a lovely person named Rita who serves you guys. So I'm here to ask, what research do you need me to provide for you so that you can make an informed decision and place this on an agenda, or how I can go ahead and get this resolved as quickly as possible so our students can compete on the global stage?
Thank you, Jen. I will not be responding specifically to your request. That's not our practice on
Yes,
the
ma'am.
board. However, I am fully present. Dr. Larson Mitchell is probably already has her spidey senses up and is working to address, or we'll have someone on her team connect with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Truly below your pay grade, but I appreciate you taking the time.
under $650 a month. That's great, yeah. Yeah, no, big, no. Thank you for the laughter, that was it. And I'm confident that your item will be addressed. Thank you. Colleagues. We're going to move on to item 4.00. That concludes public comment. We're going to move on to item 4.01. That's the upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees, Thursday, November 14th at 5 p.m. here in the boardroom. Okay, I'm looking for a motion. Trustee Guzman?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Zamora?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Zamora. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. The motion passes 7-0. The time is 6:56. Have a great night.